On a cold, heavy night in New York City, when rain hit the windows of the courthouse like it was trying to wash away memories that refused to disappear. A marriage that once carried hope, trust, passion, and shared dreams stood at the final edge of collapse, because both of them had made decisions based on assumptions instead of truth, and silence instead of communication. He stood there physically weak but emotionally composed, hiding a medical diagnosis that had changed his future and slowly destroyed his body. Choosing silence because he believed protecting her from fear was more important than sharing the terrifying reality of his condition. She stood across from him, believing that his emotional distance meant indifference, believing that his exhaustion meant loss of love, believing that his quiet behavior meant he had already moved on from the commitment he once promised to protect forever. Months before the divorce papers were filed, he had received the news in a hospital room under cold, fluorescent lights that doctors confirmed an aggressive illness with limited treatment options. And that moment reshaped his priorities instantly, because he understood time was no longer guaranteed for him. Instead of telling her the truth, he buried the report inside his bag and carried the burden alone through chemotherapy sessions, painful appointments, sleepless nights, and physical breakdowns while pretending everything was normal so she would not live in constant fear of losing him. During those same months, she started feeling emotionally abandoned because his energy changed. His presence felt distant, and the conversations that once flowed naturally turned into short responses and quiet avoidance, and without knowing the reason, she interpreted that silence as fading love rather than silent sacrifice. That emotional gap created vulnerability inside her heart. And in that vulnerable state, another man entered her life, offering attention, appreciation, and conversations that made her feel seen again, not realizing that temporary comfort was slowly turning into emotional dependency. He listened when she complained. He responded quickly when she texted. He validated her frustration about feeling ignored at home. And because she was starving for emotional connection, she mistook attraction for destiny and excitement for stability. By the time she filed for divorce, she believed she was choosing happiness over suffering, freedom over frustration, and a future where she could feel alive again, instead of trapped inside a marriage that seemed emotionally empty. And he did not fight the decision because he believed that if his body might fail soon, then forcing her to stay would only turn love into guilt. In the courtroom, when the judge asked about reconciliation, both of them answered calmly, but with completely different realities inside their minds. She thinking the relationship had already died, and he knowing that he was silently dying, but still protecting her from that truth. The atmosphere shifted dramatically when a medical file accidentally slipped from his folder and fell onto the floor, revealing diagnosis reports, treatment records, and emergency contact information that listed her name as the person responsible in case something happened to him. She picked up the document with shaking hands and read every line slowly, seeing the timeline clearly for the first time, realizing that the exact moment he became distant was the same week he received the diagnosis, realizing that his emotional withdrawal had never been about another woman but about fear, pain, and survival, realizing that the man she thought stopped loving her was actually fighting a private war against a disease without ever demanding sympathy or support. The courtroom became silent because truth had finally replaced assumptions. And the other man who had stood confidently as a new option suddenly felt like an outsider, inside a story built on misunderstanding and incomplete communication. She turned toward him with tears streaming down her face and asked why he never told her. Why he allowed her to believe that distance meant disinterest. Why he accepted divorce proceedings while silently battling something that threatened his life. And his response was steady but weak as he explained that he did not want her final memory of their marriage to be hospital beds, medical fear, and constant uncertainty about whether he would survive. He said he chose silence because he believed loving someone sometimes means letting them walk away freely instead of forcing them to stay out of obligation or pity. Even if that choice destroys your own heart in the process, the judge finalized the divorce because legally, the relationship had already dissolved through written consent and signed documents. And when the gavel struck the desk, it symbolized not only the end of a marriage, but also the beginning of irreversible consequences that neither of them fully understood at that moment. After the hearing, she tried to reconnect, tried to apologize for misjudging his silence, tried to choose him again once the truth was revealed. But his condition had progressed further, and the emotional pain of realizing she left during his most vulnerable battle created a distance that forgiveness alone could not instantly repair. Meanwhile, the relationship she had entered during her confusion began collapsing under reality because passion without foundation cannot survive financial pressure, emotional guilt, and serious life challenges. And the man who once felt exciting now felt ordinary when responsibility replaced fantasy, and when problems required stability instead of attraction. Medical bills accumulated, legal separation divided assets, work performance declined due to stress, and both of their lives started suffering consequences that extended beyond romance into practical survival. His health continued deteriorating until treatment options became limited and hospital machines replaced courtroom silence. And in those final moments, she sat beside his bed, holding his hand, while memories of everything they once shared rushed through her mind with painful clarity. He looked at her without anger, without accusation, without bitterness, and told her that he forgave her long before forgiveness was requested because he understood that she acted based on what she saw, not based on what he hid. He reminded her that his silence was never meant to manipulate or control her choices, but to protect her emotional peace, even if it meant losing her forever. He passed away carrying love for her even after divorce. And that loss shattered her completely, because regret hit her harder than grief, realizing that she had walked away from a man who sacrificed his future to shield her from fear. The new relationship eventually ended as well, because built on misunderstanding and temporary escape, it could not survive the weight of reality, leaving her alone with financial instability, emotional emptiness, and memories that now felt like sharp reminders of what she had misunderstood. In the aftermath, she understood that both of them had lost everything: marriage, health, stability, trust, future plans, not because of hatred, but because silence replaced honesty and assumptions replaced direct communication. She finally recognized that passion feels powerful, but sacrifice is deeper. Excitement feels strong, but loyalty under pressure is stronger. And truth spoken early could have saved them both from irreversible pain. The city continued moving forward, under bright lights and endless traffic, as if nothing dramatic had happened. Yet, inside her heart, there remained permanent regret for not asking deeper questions, for not noticing signs carefully, for not fighting for clarity instead of reacting to fear. His memory became a permanent lesson that sometimes the person who appears distant is silently protecting you from a battle you cannot see. And sometimes walking away too soon turns love into a story that ends not with hatred, but with lifelong regret. And in the quiet emptiness that followed, all that remained was regret for lost time, regret for mistruth, regret for decisions made without full understanding, and the painful realization that when silence dominates a relationship, both people eventually lose, even if one of them was trying to protect the other till the very last breath. End.